said, my show was canceled. I said, what? He said, because Menachem Begin is speaking in Brussels. I said, Menachem who? What did I know about Begin and Israeli politics? So anyway, we spent 24 hours, we saw the city, and then we decided then when we were about to board the plane, we were up to first class because we had an opportunity. And I came on the plane, and I found out who Menachem Begin was. Menachem Begin was the leader of the opposition party. At that time, Ben Gurion, the Labor Party had most of controlled Israel. And I saw this very distinguished elderly man right in front of all the magazines. And I had just started learning Hebrew. I had like 5 words in Hebrew. So I picked up a Hebrew newspaper. And Begin took off his spectacles and said, tell me, my dear, do you speak Hebrew? I said, Kitzat, one of 5 words that I knew. He said, sit down, talk to me. So I spent 8 hours in the plane with Begin, and he never talked politics. But what he talked about, when he found, he said, what do you do? And I told him about the family. I was in Yiddish theater. He was fascinated with Yiddish theater because he came from Poland, and he loved Yiddish. It was the most important thing. So anyway, right before we were landing, he says, what are you and Jimmy doing Saturday? Why don't you come to my house? He's meet my wife, and I have friends coming over for after Shabbat. So and he gave us his card. So Jim said, he does it to everybody. We're not going to. I said, no, he invited us to come. So after we went into the desert and we came back to the Sheridan, and then I said, well, call Begin. It's Saturday. So and this is the strangest thing in Israel at that time, he gave Begin's number to the operator. And this was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And she says, that's Begin's phone number. It's Shabbat. He doesn't answer the phone until 7 o'clock at night. And then finally, Jim called him, and he invited us over. And it was the same little apartment that when he was the head of the Irgun, and he was his whole, but it had 7 exits in this little apartment in number 1 Rosenbaum Street, and met his wife, and they had a lot of these very wealthy women that came from South America and so forth. And I went into the kitchen with Elisa Begin, and I washed little schnapps glasses and so forth, and I served. And she says, after they left, she says, Rachel, you're different than them. Why don't you come what are you doing tomorrow? Come to the house while I'm cleaning the house, have a cup of coffee with me. So anyway, and bring Jim. So that's when we came to the house, and that's what started the love affair between the Begins and the Shipleys. And then when they used to come into New York, and he was with Bonds and so forth, because he was still the leader of the opposition. So Alla would call me, Elisa would call me, Rachel, meet me in New York. So I met them in New York, and I go shopping with her. And then I would sit with Begin. I said, Menachem, one day you'll be prime minister. And he said, Rachel, Be'ezrat Hashem, with the help of God. And lo and behold, in 1977, he was prime minister. And by that time, we had moved from Cleveland to Orlando. And this was in it was in 1975 when we moved to Orlando. And then in 1979, the kids were getting older, and they were doing very well. And what we did, which I think was the best investment we ever did in our lives, we wanted the kid to go to Israel. So we sent all 4 of them to Israel when they were 16. They went together to a camp. And then several years later, we sent them to study for 1 year. There was a Machon program, which is in Mount Scopus. Kids from the left, the right, and the middle, politically, they would learn Hebrew, and each one of the kids would go there for a year, and then they would love the country. They don't have to live in Israel as long as they love the country and being proud that they're Jewish. And that's so through the years, it became a part of the kids' life as well. It wasn't just going to Hebrew school, but they really became Jews. And that's why Yiddish and theater and being a Jew, more than, and seeing how it led to Israel. And each one of my kids have a passion for Israel. It's like Vidor from generation to generation. And that's the reason we have 4 good kids that love who they are and they love being Jews. And each one of them are a story within themselves.